So there's my 4L60 transmission. Um, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit because that piece there is a cross member. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, right there. That's a cross member, and that's got a bolt right onto that. Kind of sits in a hole right there. Right there. That bolt. Right there sits in there, and it covers up when that's on. That covers up a bunch of the pan bolts, so you can't drop the pan. Since this doesn't have a drain on it, I have to pull the whole pan off to do it. So in order to do that, you have to lift up the transmission. And I don't, my setup is janky, but that's just me. I don't suggest doing it like this. I'd suggest actually going out and buying a transmission lift and, put your truck up on ramps and everything else, But this is how I've been doing it for a long time, so this is just how I do it. So I pulled out the bolts on the cross member, and I pulled out the ones in the back of the transmission. And what I'm going to do next for step 2 here is I'm going to throw this cross member back in place. Since I already pulled the bolts out of the back of the pan, I can put the cross member back in place so I can get rid of this jack, and then I can completely drop the pan, like finish up unbolting it, and then I'll pick this up from there. Okay, well, I'm back. Let's run through this again. So I put the cross member back on, dropped the transmission down on this cross member, and I didn't really say what a cross member was, but it is, in this case, this cross member is a support for the back of the transmission, so it doesn't, so the transmission doesn't fall. And so what I did is I dropped the pan a little bit, as you can see. Right there, there's a little gap there. But see, it is also hung up on the cross member. I don't know, you can't really see it. My lighting isn't very good, and I'm sorry. Bear with me. The pan here is hung up on this cross member. And so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to jack up the back of the transmission so it's off the cross member. And the panels in the front will slowly start to drop. And then, I don't know, you can kind of hear it leaking a little bit. It's dripping. So, let's see here. I don't have much room down here, so bear with me. As I start, you can see the pan there. I'm lifting up the back of the transmission as we speak. It'll start to drop the front of the pan a little bit. And I got all these pans laying on the floor. You can't really see them, but there's a bunch of pans I got from work. And it's starting to leak a little bit. So we'll keep going with it. See if we can get that pan to drop a little bit more. And almost there. Yep, there we go. Eventually, it'll get to the point where it won't drain anymore, and you're eventually going to have to pull the pan out, and then we'll go through there. From there, we'll go through how to put the filter and whatnot in this transmission. But right now, I'm just going to let that go, and I'll explain a few things here. So, the cross member, this black piece right here, you can see my hand right here. This is the cross member, and like I said, the transmission sits on top of it for support. And the way all this works, like in general theory, the transmission, the fluid keeps it from, without fluid your transmission doesn't move. So you might notice it shifting hard, or things like that, just little things like rough shifting out of park or between gears. It'll shift really hard. And some transmissions have kits in them for hard shifting, for towing or whatnot, but that's something that you can't undo. It's something that that happens when they rebuild a transmission. So in this case, this one's been rebuilt. I drove out to North Dakota last week, as some of you know, and I changed the fluid before I went, but I screwed up the filter. The filter didn't actually seat the way it's supposed to, and I must have had an air leak, so that's why my fluid is coming out pretty black. I don't know, you can't really tell because of the light, but it's coming out pretty black, and that's because it burnt the clutch. So right now my attempts of failure, which is pretty much it, because this transmission is more than likely done. It's more than likely junk, but you know, I'm gonna blow $50 and change the fluid and see if it helps. I'm gonna jack up the transmission a little more, try to get that fluid out. And this is very controlled. Most of the time when you drop a pan, you don't have this kind of luck. It normally goes all over the place. That's why I have 4 of these pans laying down here. And when you do it, you have in the pan, there's 4 to 5 quarts of ATF, and there's like 12 in this transmission altogether with the torque converter, depending on the size of the torque converter and, you know, the different specs of different things. This one was 12 quarts, very expensive. And by the way, you don't want an open flame, because ATF, automatic transmission fluid, is very, very, very flammable. It's not gas, but it lights very easy. So I'd suggest waiting till your motor's cool. Don't have a heater going, and at the moment I'm freezing because I don't have the heater going. So no heater, no open flame. And once you get everything together, you know, clean everything up good. You want to. I'm doing this in a dirty garage, and you know, you don't really normally want to do that because you get dirt in the transmission and gears grind and plates go out, and that's not good. Dirt in a motor and transmission is just not good. So typically you want to do this in a nice clean shop, but for my sakes, I'm doing it in the garage. So it's just about done dripping, and since I don't really want to lay under the transmission while it's 1, not bolted up, and 2, not supported, I want to get out from underneath it. So I'm going to pause this and we'll come back after I get the pan off. So I'm back. I got the pan off, as you can see. It's off, and I'm in the process of cleaning it, and I found out that, well, in this case my transmission is junk, because you can kind of see all these flakes in here. All these things here, those are metal shavings. Metal shavings in the bottom of a pan is not good. Right there, that's a shaving right there. No, that's not good. So this transmission is junk. I'm going to put fluid in it anyway and give it a shot. So I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. I just wanted to clarify what you don't want to find in your pan. So yeah, give me a minute and I'll show you how to put the filter in and put the pan back on. So here we are again. We're going to install the transmission filter, and you can kind of see that hole right there. Yeah, right there. That's where it's going to stick into, and there's a little spout on the filter for it. You just put it up in there and make sure it looks good. Give her a couple taps. Now make sure it's in there good. Make sure it's not loose or anything, and it's good to go. Now we throw our gasket on. Put the gasket on. Put the pan back on. Bolt it all up, and I'll catch up with you then because I need both of my hands. So I'll catch up with you then.